Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint a cornucopia with fall vegetables, apples and grapes and all kinds of good stuff. We'll be using acrylic paints, and I'll be showing you step by step how to do it all the way through from the drawing to the finish. So let's get started. Okay, so this is my example painting. I went ahead and changed up the composition a little bit. I decided that the apple and the pumpkin and the pear were all kind of pointing straight up along with this guy. So I decided to turn the apple just a little bit, and in order to kind of do that without having to repaint the whole thing, I messed with it on Photoshop last night. So I just kind of cut out that part of the apple and rotated it a little bit. So I decided we're going to kind of turn that way a little bit, and I think I'm going to turn the neck of this guy a little bit that way so that everything's not kind of pointing this way. Fun Photoshop. Makes it nice. So, and another thing that I noticed was up right in here, the pumpkin, I'm going to make him be in front of the grapes so that he kind of is brought forward a little bit. So just a couple changes to the original drawing, but let's go over our palette really quick. Oh, that's here. So I've got quinacridone magenta, cadmium red medium, cadmium red light, cadmium orange, yellow, Indian yellow hue, cadmium yellow medium, yellow oxide, phthalo green, yellow shade, sap green, that's kind of an optional color, phthalo blue, green shade, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, burnt sienna, burnt umber, carbon black, zinc white, and that's also kind of an optional color, titanium white and unbleached titanium. So a lot of colors, pretty much the whole rainbow. A lot of these can be mixed. Like you could probably kind of mix something similar to this by mixing these two together. So if you don't have all of these colors, don't worry about it. Get them as close as you can, and you can kind of, hopefully mix something. But just to save time, I went ahead and just put out all the paint, so I don't have to speed it up a little bit because this one's going to take us a while. Let me put this aside real quick, and I'll show you how to draw this. So I'm going to use a 9 by 12 inch gesso board again. And before I start, I want to say welcome to our Patreon folks. Thanks for supporting us this month and making this video possible. I've got my husband Mark with me today.
Hey there, everybody.
Forgot to introduce him.
That's okay.
We had a few technical issues there at the beginning, so we'll have to cut out that for very beginning a little bit. No biggie. No biggie. All right. So I'm going to use the a water-soluble pencil here, and if you can't see it, let me know, and I will switch to my water-soluble pen. But the first thing I did was kind of try to figure out how big I wanted the cornucopia, and it's really almost sort of smack dab in the middle. It's just slightly off center, so this side of it is slightly off middle, and then it kind of curves around an oval shape right here. The first thing you're going to want to do, though, is kind of figure out where your horizon line is going to be, just so that you can kind of know where to place your cornucopia on that. So I did it about a third of the way. If you kind of split this into 3 parts, this bottom part is going to be right at the third mark. And if you use your pencil and kind of your finger, sort of lay it where you want it to go, and use your finger like that, kind of hold it firmly and run it along. You can use your finger on the other side to get the exact same distance without moving your hand, if that makes sense. So kind of a good little trick just to make sure, or you can use a T-square too. They got tools for that.
All right. Modern technology.
I know it. Rulers, all kinds of things.
It's an incredible time we live in.
I knew you were going to comment on that.
Of course.
All right, so I would start by doing your oval, and that is going to kind of skew slightly this way, slightly angled. So I'm going to bring it in, and really you only have to do the upper half of it because the rest of this is going to be covered up by our fruits and vegetables, but you might want to kind of figure out sort of the bottom would be kind of somewhere in this region here. So do that, and then do your second line, and then this line is going to parallel this first one, and then as you get toward this side here, it's going to actually kind of narrow a little bit because you're only seeing like this side of it. It's going to be angled away from us a little bit, so we're only going to see just a little bit less of that side. So I'm thickening it up on this side a little bit so that it look a little bit more in perspective. Okay, like right there. I think it's showing up okay on my screen, so I'm going to
looks pretty good.
Pencil. All right, and then I'm going to angle it down kind of towards the halfway mark. So if you sort of want to angle it down towards there, and then right about, let me see where it stops. So there's our halfway. If we did half again, it'd be right about here. So maybe about 1/8 right here. About, I don't know, 2 finger widths from the edge of the canvas. We're going to curve up. And you could do a curlicue with this if you wanted to. I might give it a little bit more of a pronounced turn there. Like that. And then curve it and make sure you go down below the horizon line there with this. And it's actually going to kind of come down underneath the corn and meet up sort of right in here behind these corn. Then the 2 corn are going to be, I did this back one first just to kind of give me a reference. So it's kind of about parallel with where that curve is. And I just kind of did a rounded edge there and then straightened it out. I did kind of a straight line there and then curved. You know what the corn looks like, I'm sure. It's pretty easy. Just a long kind of oval, flattened oval with kind of a slightly pointed tip. And then another one that's crossing over this way and down in front. Like that. And then I'm not going to worry about the back end of it because I want to do the basket first and then paint the, corn stalks in afterwards. So, and then the edge of the grapes are going to come in. You can just do kind of a few little curlicues there so you kind of know where a couple grapes will be. And then maybe a couple up here. Coming this way, like that. It's kind of above the corn. If you kind of come from above the corn, maybe about a thumb's width above it, so that they're not all kind of lined up all the way across. We're trying to kind of create different levels with our composition so that we don't have, all of the fruits lined up at the same heights and all that. So I may even move my pear up just a little bit so that it's not on the same level as my apple too, or move my apple down just slightly. All right, so the gourd is the next thing I would do because it's going to be kind of filling up this back area. So I want to get it as close to the top as I can. So I think I'm going to curve the neck in a little bit more pronounced so that it's kind of pointing this way just slightly. So just like that, just a little bit away from the edge there, and it's going to come in and back up and around. This is a gooseneck squash, by the way, if you wanted to know. I know you were worried about it. And
I was.
You were like, what kind of squash was that?
Well, now I know why we don't usually paint food, because it just makes me hungry watching.
I can imagine. We didn't have lunch, did we?
No, we didn't. And all we had
That may have been a mistake.
And all we had was sugar for breakfast.
I know. Could be a long day. All right, so I went ahead and kind of put our lines into, because when I fill this in, I'm going to probably just go ahead and sort of put in the stripes as I go. So these sort of follow the outline of the neck. The ones that come from the stem sort of come out this way, and then the rest of them kind of come down and around like that. And there'll be a few on the back side too. Okay. Looks good, I think. And we can turn the head of our pear a little bit. Maybe bring it up just slightly and tilt it slightly this way so that it kind of has a little bit more of an angle. Maybe bring that stem up higher. Because I'm just noticing now that this is at the same level too. So that may have been one of the reasons that I wasn't completely happy with the composition. So the pear is going to have kind of this rounded, and I'm going to go ahead and do that next and bring it all the way down to the grapes. And that way we're going to fill in all this nice area right in here. I had originally had like another green apple here, but it was just too crowded. So the composition on this one was my own creation. So that's why I'm kind of messing with it a little bit, because it's sort of my own, like, trying to figure out where to fit stuff, since I didn't have a photograph of exactly what I wanted. Okay, so then this apple is going to be pointed this way, and I think I am going to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter. Right about there. The top of the apple is slightly flattened, and then it curves around like that. And then it should be big enough to kind of fill in this whole area right here. So we'll bring the pumpkin up high enough so that it kind of covers that area. But it should be just below kind of the top of that pear. And then the mouth of it is going to be pointing that way. And there's our little stem right there. Then our green grapes are going to be in this area, right in here, and you can kind of just put in a few little rounded things like that. We don't have to draw them all in. And then our pumpkin is going to be right in here, so he's going to be just above the bottom of the corn, just below this one, so sort of right in between this area right in here. We're going to start the bottom of our pumpkin, and the top of it should cover up to this apple here. So we might make a bigger grape right here to kind of make sure our apple doesn't look abnormally long. So right like that. In fact, I think I will put another grape right in there. Just like that. Okay, so then our pumpkin I did a little bit different. I wanted it to kind of look a little bit more facing us, so I started the center of it kind of right here, and you can kind of just mark a little oval for the center if you want, and then radiate your lines out from that like this. These ones are going to kind of be rounded here, and then these ones on the sides are going to come and curve around. Like that. And then our grapes are going to kind of come beside it and then sort of fall in front at the bottom here. Like that. And that's pretty much our drawing. We'll have some leaves over here and some corn stalks or wheat stalks, but I'm not going to put those in yet because I want to paint the background. So let's go ahead and start that. Get that going. Yeah, I'll go ahead and use the big brush for now, and then I'll probably switch to the smaller one. And I decided to go ahead and just paint around everything. Just makes it a little bit easier. Normally I would probably paint the background first, but This one is complicated enough. I didn't want to have to draw it twice. So I'm going to use phthalo blue and burnt sienna for the background. Make that beautiful teal color, and I'll use some white to soften it up. I just think it makes a really pretty contrast against the bright colors of the fruit. Make it a little bit softer. I did the same color at the bottom, but I just left the darker shade, so we're going to use the same color on both upper and bottom areas. You doing okay, hon?
I'm doing great.
Good.
You may pull your thing down just a tad. It's going off the top there. Perfect.
Thank you.
I'm looking up Cornucopia facts here.
Nice.
So the first fact is it was entered into the English dictionary in 1508.
Wow.
Yep.
It's old. All right, you can kind of see that I'm also sort of letting a little bit of variegated colors happen. So I'm letting using the brush to kind of create some different dark and light spots. Just to give it a little bit of interest so it's not just a solid blue behind it. Since there's a lot of it kind of nothing going on up here. Maybe pick up a little bit of that lighter color. There we go. I have kind of two colors of this background, sort of like a lighter color and a little bit darker color. So I'm just kind of tapping into either one of them every now and then, picking up a little bit of the lighter and darker. Give it a little contrast. I did go a little bit lighter along the bottom here and a little bit darker up in the corners too. So that's just kind of will pull your eye in slightly. There we go. Okay, I think that's good. Mix up a little bit more. So I kind of used it all. Do the darker color down here. And I probably could switch to a smaller brush at this point, but I'm too lazy, so we'll just go with it. I have so much paint on this brush, I don't want to lose it by cleaning it out. Just take your time.
At least you're honest there.
Right. What'd you just do?
I just hit my knee on the desk.
Ouch.
That's all right.
Charlie horse. Okay. Just filling this in kind of carefully. This part is...
Oh, we have a question.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Gail wants to know, how do you keep from having a halo effect when doing the background?
By doing this background first, it should avoid that, because then everything else is going to go on top of it. The halo can kind of sometimes happen if you paint around your object. But like right in here, I probably need to go back in and kind of do a brush stroke that's sort of at an angle to that edge, like this, to kind of, if I get any like little dark or, you know, like a light area where I kind of went around it, that way it'll sort of blend it out. It'll break up that outline. So I had too much of that darker color right there. So just kind of going back in and sort of adding like random brush strokes around the edges of things can help. They go like put your corner right up against that edge and then pull down. I'm kind of messing mine up because I'm showing. I didn't need to do that. Okay, well, I may have to mess with that a little bit. I think I'm creating my halo more than fixing one. I didn't have one to begin with, so. This color is a little bit darker than the other since I was doing the bottom. That's why. Go back in with some of this lighter color. But yeah, that definitely can happen when you're kind of painting around things, especially if you're doing multiple colors of painting around. Not as much of an issue as if you're doing a solid color. Turn this just a little bit, make it easier to get in this little corner here. I'm going to kind of lightly go over that, sort of break up that edge so it's not quite so perfect. Soften it up just a little bit. This painting I did, you know, very fast. I was kind of doing it quickly last night after our other painting. I had, you know, all researched all my you know, what I wanted to do and drawn it out and all that, you know, had my drawing ready, but I still hadn't painted it quite yet. So I painted it really quickly, but because I did that, it kind of ended up with this really nice, soft, sort of impressionist feel, and I really liked. I was going to go back and kind of clean up some edges and make it a little bit crisper, but then I really liked what it was doing, so I decided to kind of go with it. So our picture is going to have a little bit softer, maybe a little bit less not structured, but a little bit more stylized. I think that's the word I'm looking for than I might normally paint. I really liked the looser feel of it, so a little bit more painterly. I'm going back in now and adding some of this little bit of the lighter color over the top of that dark blue, just to kind of break that up, leaving that dark kind of around the fruit and stuff so that it looks like it's shadowed. Okay, there we go.
It almost looks like a paint by numbers thing right now.
Yeah, it kind of does. Well, that's kind of when you're doing the traceables for sure, that's kind of the nice thing about them, because they sort of have that ease about them. All right, I'm going to switch now to a number 6 bright, so kind of a medium size flat, maybe about a 1/2 inch, And I'm going to use my burnt umber to fill in the cornucopia. This is definitely one of those paintings that's going to look a lot worse before it looks better. So it's going to be a hot mess very soon. And it'll stay that way for a lot of the painting until towards the end. So this is just going to be a process. Anytime you have this many components and each component needs layers, you're just going to end up with a kind of a complicated, messy looking painting. Okay, I'm going to go back in and kind of lightly brush back over these lines in the direction that I want my basket to go, and sort of soften up that edge, because it's not going to be a straight line, right? It's going to kind of have some details coming up over the top of it, some of the basket. Use that edge of my brush and just kind of pull along that edge and down in. You're always so quiet on these Patreon ones, and
Well,
I guess it's because there's not as many people asking questions.
The unusual suspects aren't asking too many questions, which is okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then up here, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Going to do this sort of choppy brush strokes. To fill in, hopefully there's enough of a difference there in the color too, so you can see where that edge is. You don't want to lose that. There we go, right down to the apple. And just make sure you are going right down to your line there so that you don't have any white spots in between your fruit and your basket. And I'm going to grab the black, and this center part is going to be more of the black. And I still have that brown in my brush, so it's kind of a little bit of both. And we'll go ahead and fill in the inside of the basket with the black. Just carefully using the edge of my brush there to fill it in. Okay, there we go. And while that's wet, I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of that brown, maybe a tiny, tiny bit of the unbleached titanium, and sort of put in some lines in this. It's going to kind of follow the curve, so kind of use that outside edge as your guide, and I'm just kind of doing some little dashed lines on the inside there. That'll just save us time later. If you get it on your board, you can wipe that off. All right, it's looking good. So now that I have that black and brown in there, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this sap green. I kind of just offloaded it by sort of smushing it down onto the palette. Try to get off a little bit of that brown and black. But this area of the gourd is going to be really dark, so go ahead and start filling that in with this dark color. And then I'm going to wipe it off and pick up a little bit more of that sap green and blend that in. You do want it to be green, you don't want it to be completely black, but it should be almost as dark as this background color because it's kind of going down in that shadow area. And then we'll fill in the rest of this gourd with the green. And I'm going to kind of use I kind of lost all my lines there, but that's all right. I'm going to use the kind of curve of that gourd to sort of brush any brush strokes out so that it makes them look a little like they're going in the direction of the growth. Any lines that show up in my paint. All right, that looks good. We're going to be working dark to light here, so we're just going to kind of put in most of our dark values, and then we'll kind of start working in our lighter colors as we go. And grab the quinacridone magenta and a little bit of purple. Maybe a tiny bit of the burnt umber. We'll do our shadow part of our apple here. This bottom area. It's actually going to be darker than that. Get some more purple and brown there. Go really dark right in here. There we go. And then I'm just going to put some of this color in here too. This will be good color for our grapes. And then while that is wet, I'm going to grab the cadmium red and pull down. So if it dried already, just let it dry completely, or if it's starting to halfway dry, let it dry completely. I'm going to add a little bit of the quinacridone to it, just so that it's in that same color family.
Hey, the union wants to know, do I get time and a half for today? For working on a Sunday?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, I guess so. Your union? You got a union over there?
Oh, yeah.
Farming?
Yep. A union of one. And a schnoodle.
Yeah, the schnoodle definitely gets paid overtime. He's working hard over there.
Yep.
Sleeping.
Snoring.
Exactly. Exactly. Scooter got his Halloween costume in the mail yesterday, so he was not excited about it.
Not nearly as you were.
Right, not nearly as excited as I was. So you guys that are in my Thankful Heart group on Facebook will get to see that on Monday. We're going to be dressed up for Halloween during my Monday art chat. I'll just give you a hint. We have matching costumes, me and Scooter. Enough said. I haven't talked about my costume at all, so I don't think anybody in the groups knows anything about what I'm doing, so it'll be good surprise. Fun stuff. Scooter would say otherwise, but... Alright, I'm going to grab the phthalo green and just a little bit of red. And we're going to use that for the background of our green grapes.
Yeah, I just need to find a rat mask.
Mark wants to be boho rat for Christmas. Or for Halloween. Christmas. Funny. Yeah. It would be pretty funny if you could find one. I don't remember seeing one at Walmart.
I know. And I just thought of it like 2 or 3 days before Halloween, so.
Probably just do your face up with a rat,
I
get yourself some ears or something and then just
some whiskers.
Just do some whiskers on your face.
That sounds like a lot of work.
I know somebody who could face paint your face for you. So.
Do you know an artist?
I do. I know an artist that could do that. Hook you up. Okay, so dark green. And I'm not really worried too much about the structure right now. I'm just kind of getting the color down. We'll need to go over the top of our apple a little bit, but I'm not gonna do that right now because I want to have kind of a smooth area to work with there, and we'll put our grapes on top later, the highlight color later. Clean that out. We'll put it in our pear. Pear is going to be the yellow oxide, a little bit of the burnt sienna. Burnt sienna color is going to be kind of in our shadow area here. I'm mixing way more color on my brush than I need. I think the paper really soaks up the paint color because I've been doing that this whole time. Using a lot less paint on the canvas or on the gesso board than I did on paper. Okay, so kind of doing the bottom half, and I'm going to wipe off my brush and then use that straight yellow oxide at the top there. This is definitely, I would say, a intermediate level, to advanced level painting, just because it's got so many components and there's a lot of painting around things, a lot of shadowing and shading and things like that. So it's definitely one of the more complicated paintings that we've done, I would say. So if this is your first time painting, I might not choose this one, just because it might be a little bit frustrating. I'm going to try to break it down into easier steps, but it'll take longer. The less it's not. The less painting experience that you have, the longer it'll take you, I think. That's what I'm trying to say there. I'm going to add a little bit of the...
So this will take me about a month?
It could. Quinacridone magenta there in that little area there. Just kind of going back over it letting some of those brush strokes show, because I did have a lot of brush strokes kind of showing this sort of technique has a lot of sort of, I want to say splotchiness, but sort of that, there, it's not super smoothly blended. If you notice there, there's kind of a little bit more dots and less of the smooth blending that I've done in some other videos. So that's actually a little bit easier as long as you get those, like, splotches and things in the right area. I think the Impressionist painting is a little bit easier to achieve than if it was full realism, super smooth blends. Grab a little bit more of that dark burnt umber color, get some of that dark right down in there. I don't want to mess with it too much at this point because it's starting to dry on me, so I don't want to make it lift off the canvas, but I think that looks pretty good.
Okay, so you talked about difficulty there.
Mm-hmm.
In comparison...
I'm use this on here, what I've got left on my brush. Yeah, go ahead.
In comparison to the deer in the woods,
yes.
How difficult is that compared to that?
They're really kind of different techniques. So kind of would depend on your strength and skill set as an artist. Because the deer had a lot of small, very fine detail. This one is a little bit, a little bit larger areas. So I would think that this would be a little bit easier. But this one's definitely got a much more detail on a bigger scale. The deer was a very small section and most of the background was super easy, and then the lining was hard. The lining was difficult. This has got a little bit of lining, but this has definitely got a lot more to it, so I think that this will take longer, even if it's not as difficult, if that makes sense. So
yep, makes sense to me.
Okay,
so next cornucopia, can you do it with like candy?
what?
Can you do the next cornucopia with candy?
With candy?
Yeah. Cake. Ice cream.
Is that your idea of a cornucopia?
Yeah, this looks too healthy.
I got burnt sienna here that I'm just kind of filling in. I just used this shadow color that I was using on the pear for this.
This looks kind of vegetarian.
I'm gonna that reminds me of the meal plans that we were looking at earlier today. I'm lucky if we get to the store in a good week, to go grocery shopping, and then the actual idea of actually cooking sometimes is just like too much. This is yellow oxide and purple, so we were looking at the meal plans we tried one a while back and it didn't work out, so I guess we were looking at another one today, and then the meals were all kind of vegan and paleo and gluten-free, and there were so many different kinds of options. I just kind of felt left out a little bit, like kind of wish I had.
Well, they didn't have like
regular.
They didn't have chicken nuggets and
exactly.
And
they don't
Taco
have the
Bell
kind of food that
burritos.
we normally eat.
frozen pizza wasn't on
Right. It was like, what kind of food is
there.
this?
Exactly. I mean, come on, let's get serious.
So purple, yellow oxide there for that one. And it might seem weird to have the purple underneath the yellow corn, but if you look at this, you can see in between there, you need that dark color, that little pop of purple in between your kernel corns. And that's what kind of makes it look like it's coming forward at you. Having that little bit of dark color in there makes a big difference. Okay. Clean that out. I'm definitely probably going to, even though I'm not going to have you blow dry the canvas today, I may have to have you clean my water a couple of times because it's It's already looking a little bit worse for wear there. Okay, now to the pumpkin. We're going to grab the cadmium red light and a little bit of burnt sienna and do pumpkin with this color. And at this point, if you want to switch to a smaller brush, you might find that helpful. If this brush is starting to get too big to fit into these areas, you can maybe switch to an angle brush or a smaller flat bright.
And your traceable for this will be posted later?
Yes, yeah, I didn't get it done this morning because I was making those changes to the composition, so, and honestly just resting my arm because it had been bothering me. My elbow. It's weird, painting hurts me less than drawing for some reason. I think it's the way I'm holding my pencil and the angle in my wrist or something. Drawing really aggravates the elbow. All right, so getting this dark color in here. I'm really not worried about my edges that much right now. I'm kind of going over them a little bit. It's completely fine. We'll be cleaning those up a little bit later, and really, like I said, this kind of painting technique is a little bit more sloppy, so even if you have a little bit, I mean, you can, if you look really closely at mine, you can kind of see where some of the orange got on the purple, and you know, it's not completely smooth edges everywhere, and that kind of adds to that sort of painterly effect. So I wouldn't be as concerned with getting everything completely clean the way I would on a normal painting maybe. It's kind of nice, it kind of frees you up a little bit. This is burnt umber. Just filling in using the corner of the brush to fit in that little area there. And I'll use it up there in this one too. Stem for that. All right, we're filled in. Too bad. So now this is dry. We can work on the background here of the basket. I'm going to get that cleaned out pretty well so that I don't doesn't dry out while I'm working. Let's see. So let's go ahead and use this brush. This is the number 4 bright. We'll start putting in our basket details. So I'm going to use a little bit of yellow oxide, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of burnt umber, a lot of the unbleached titanium. So I'm going to start with the kind of the unbleached titanium and burnt umber, sort of do a medium color, just a little bit lighter than this, and start to kind of lay in where I want my basket weave to go. And probably start in the middle maybe. So leave a little bit of room here. And this one's going to go up this way. And just doing little choppy brush strokes. As it goes around, it's going to turn. So this is our pivot point right here. This is really light because I'm just going to kind of trying to figure out where I want these to go. And you could actually use your chalk if it makes it easier for you to see. Let me do that real quick. So this one is going to be like right in here. I'm just kind of leaving one sort of long, maybe 1.5 inch there and there. And then they get smaller and closer together as they go up around the corner. Around the horn, I guess. And these ones are going to go this way. lines are going to kind of fill in the rest of that. Okay, that makes sense? So kind of start out even with this line here, and then as you go up around, you're going to kind of rotate it so that by the end here, these are kind of parallel to the tip. All right, go a little bit lighter with that color so that it shows up. There we go. And I'm just going to start kind of putting in lines, leaving just a little bit of space in between the two rows so that there's a little bit of darkness in between these rows. All right, now as I get the lighter color, you'll see what I mean a little bit easier. It'll be a little easier to see what I'm talking about. But here's the yellow oxide. And I'm going to set it down and kind of curve it a little bit. That might be a little too bright. Grab a little bit of brown. Like that. Actually, I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. Use the 3/8" angle here, see if that gives me a little bit more control. And I'm going to turn this. Yellow oxide and unbleached titanium here. Now when I do my next line, there we go, these are a little bit smaller. I'm not going to do them too carefully because I don't want them to look too matchy-matchy. I'm going to go quickly. And it helps if you have a couple colors on your brush, so maybe grab a little bit of the burnt umber to have on like one side a little bit darker than the other so that when you're doing this it kind of has a little variegation in your brush. There we go. Slightly curved. And the overlapping kind of does like this. So I'm trying to kind of go in between what I've done here. Maybe this one's kind of long, so this one will be kind of in between a little bit like that and like that. And I'm not doing it like every time, you know, I'm kind of letting it be a little bit random, but that's the idea, is kind of letting them overlap a little bit, but have a little bit of dark in between like that. Okay, so if I see an area where they're kind of not overlapping well enough, I'm going to go back in and kind of add a little bit of brighter color there to get them to look like they're woven. I feel like I'm not explaining this well. Hopefully I am.
Should we do a basket weaving tutorial?
Well, I just make sure that I'm not going over this too fast because I kind of got to painting it before I stopped to really explain it.
I think you're doing okay.
Okay. If at any time I'm going too fast, you guys let me know. I will repeat, go back over some steps or show it more slowly because I'm kind of booking it today, trying to get this done since it's such a complicated one. Try not to spend too much time on any one thing, but I have no problem with explaining it more thoroughly if you're confused.
We could do it like one of those little cooking shows where
Raise your hand if you have a question.
I'm just saying we could do it like one of those little cooking shows where they would just like kind of mix the ingredients and put in the oven and instantly it's done.
I've honestly thought about doing that and had like paintings that were, partly done. And because there's some techniques that take so long to do, I was curving that in the wrong direction. Okay, and then down here, these are just going to kind of barely be poking in at the bottom, curving around the side. So make sure you kind of go over your edge a little bit to kind of break up that edge. And I'm going to go back in and shadow these shadow areas. So be sure you do a lighter color here, and then we'll shadow them and make them look like they're receding. So don't worry about them being too bright right now. We'll fix it. Okay, so not too hard, right? Just a lot of little overlapping lines with the little kind of space. It might help if you kind of drew your lines in between too, so that you kind of know where to do your crisscross over the top. But we're going to shadow those areas as well, so that'll really emphasize that dip. Okay, and then we're going to use this. Now on mine I kind of just did a rolled edge, which was just kind of all in one direction all the way around. But then I saw one that had like a braided edge, and so I thought we might try that. So I'm going to kind of start here, and it's actually going to kind of go from the middle each time. So we're going to kind of start in the middle here and start in the middle here and go this way, start in the middle here, go this way. Definitely need a smaller brush though. Let me get a small round like this. This is my number 2/0 round, sorry. I didn't know you were zoomed in.
I was super zoomed in there,
I saw
sorry.
that.
So they could see the texture.
No, that's good. Okay, so this will be good for this technique too, because you can be able to see it better.
We'll smoothly splice in a shot of a paintbrush later.
Yeah.
They would never know the difference, I'm sure.
There we go. I'm going to grab some of that unbleached titanium too, because I feel like it's getting a little... There we go. Get a little bit of both colors in my brush at the same time. A little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of unbleached titanium here. There we go. If you just kind of remember not to go any farther than this halfway mark, then you'll be all set. I mean, you could even draw a line if you wanted to. So these are going to go this way, and these are going to come this way. And try to keep your angle about the same. Braden. Okay, bit of the burnt umber. As I get up here at the top, I'm going to be seeing less of the edge, so I'm really going to only be seeing this side of it by the time we get over here. So it's just going to be pretty much just going in that direction, because this middle line is kind of disappearing up over this edge, if that makes sense. So there we go. If you want to do it easier, just do them all in the same direction, because this one is a little bit trickier, but I think it looks pretty cool. I'm just going back in with some dark and light, trying to make sure that I have enough contrast between these areas. Going back in where these two colors meet, and putting a little bit dark right here on the junctions where these kind of go tuck up underneath that next layer. And then same thing on this side. It's gonna be a little bit dark right here where they kind of meet. And then I'm going to grab that lighter color and make sure I've got a nice bright highlight over there we go. Kind of cool. Looks like braided. I like it. Alright, we'll let that dry a bit before we put in our shadows. We'll work on our gourd here. I'm going to grab some of the phthalo green, add a little bit of yellow oxide to it, tone it down just slightly. And we'll put in some of our stripies. Start up here. The ones back here are kind of do like the pumpkin. They're going to kind of go away from the center before they go down. So these ones are going to kind of come up this way, and then they're going to start curving down around the outside of the gourd. So we'll just put a few little lighter green stripes in there to brighten it up. And I'm just doing little choppy brush strokes, so it's not a solid line. Okay, I'm going to add some unbleached titanium. And we'll do a few more stripies with the unbleached titanium. Little overlapping lines. These gourds have a lot of they don't have solid stripes, so they're kind of lots of interesting texture happening. And I'm going kind of over the top of that brighter green a little bit too. So leaving that darker green kind of in between a little bit. Go right up to that pear. You can even use some of that darker color right along that outside edge if we need to define it a little bit better. Doing okay, hon?
I'm doing okay.
You're getting it quiet again. I think you're reading or like playing video games or doing something over there.
I might be sleeping.
Give some of that sap green here. Do some darker striping in between.
You just think it's the dog.
I know, yeah. When you get quiet over there for so long, it's just like, I feel like I'm in here by myself.
And now you can't see me, so you
I
just
know,
never
now
know.
I can't see you, so I can't tell what you're doing over there. Definitely think you're sleeping for real now. I'm going to grab some unbleached titanium and a little tiny bit of cadmium yellow medium. Make it kind of a yellow-green color. We'll add a little bit of this. Now this one's going to be kind of a lot less, so just sort of sparingly. And our light source in this one is kind of coming from sort of this direction slightly. So this area would be more shadowed. Just right, where this is overlapping because the light's kind of hitting. This is definitely going to be our brightest area up here. I'll grab a little bit of white and we'll give him a little bit of bright white as well. Keeping this very, very soft. Okay. Clean that out. And I'm going to come back in and put some shadows in there, but for now I'm going to leave it. I'm going to grab a little bit of the unbleached titanium and add a little bit of that to my stem. I grab a little bit of black, do a little bit of black right around where it joins the neck of the squash. Maybe a few little stripies there in it. And I'm going to use what's in my brush there and sort of brush it off into those areas back here. Add some more of the background interest. There we go. Okay, I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to grab my number 2 bright now. And most of the rest of this is going to be done with this brush. It's got it just does a good job with some of the more finer details, the techniques I like to use. So I'm going to use phthalo green and cadmium yellow. And I'm going to go in here in our apple and add some of that color right at the center and kind of pull up from that center mark. Up and out. It's going to be really weird. You're like, are you sure? Yes. Yes, I'm sure.
Do you know what you're doing?
I kind of do.
Okay.
Hopefully. day. Maybe. Maybe. We'll find out. I'm going to use a little bit of that burnt umber. I put a little bit of burnt umber like right along the front side of it. And then I'm going to use a little bit of that over here just to kind of shadow, add a little bit darker shadow back into that gourd right there. While I got it on my brush. And we'll put a little shadow on this side of him too, because he'd have a shadow kind of cast from that pear as well. Just kind of light wash of color. Add a little water to your paint if you need to. Make sure your gourd's dry though before you do this so that you don't lift off any of your other layers underneath. Okay, there we go. Actually need to add a little bit right here too, notice. There we go. The only part of him that's probably getting any kind of light is right in here. Okay, I'm going to grab some more burnt umber. We'll darken up that shadow right there along the pear. And then I'm going to grab the yellow oxide and a little bit of the green color. Mostly yellow oxide this time, so sort of this time over here I did more phthalo green than yellow oxide. This one I'm going to do more yellow oxide than phthalo green, and we're going to add our kind of greenish tint to our pear. And I decided to do kind of more of a yellow pear than a green pear, so it's not super green. But it still has a little bit of that color in there. Grab a little bit more of that yellow oxide and just brush back over. Like that. A little bit of the Indian yellow. I'll use that on this side, kind of brighten up the tone of it. The Indian yellow is very transparent, so if it's not showing up, you can add a little bit of unbleached titanium to it. I'm going to grab the unbleached titanium and start putting in our highlight areas. So I still have that kind of all these other colors in my brush that are kind of blending with it. And we'll put in, there's a little shadow area right here, so I kind of do a highlight here area and then kind of dab in some highlight a little bit lower. Maybe this part is showing up too. Grab a little bit of that quinacridone magenta and yellow oxide. Kind of touch up this area. The key to these kind of things is just to make sure that your transitions are dark enough so that this and this value are similar. It'll make them look like they're both in that same shadowed area. So I'm going to grab a little bit of purple. I'm just going to darken up. You still want to be able to see where the one starts and the other stops, but it's really helpful and it really makes things recede and look more curved if you've got really dark transitions, especially between the two in your shadowy areas. like that. So I kind of corrected that so that the apple and the pear had more similar values down in that shadow spot. And then when we put our grapes, our highlights in on our grapes, it'll really pop them forward against that dark, dark area. Okay, I feel like our pear is kind of getting a little misshapen. I don't know what's happening with him. I guess because he's kind of leaning this way. I wonder if I should put him at front of the basket there. I don't know. I think I might even him out over here on this side just a little bit. Grab a little bit more of that yellow oxide and kind of pull him out just slightly right over here. There we go. Okay. Grab a little bit of that quinacridone color. Add that along that edge. It's not one to cover very well. There we go. Okay, so in our apple, I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow oxide, maybe a little bit of that Indian yellow to brighten it up. And I'm going to put it right in this area right here, where it gets the highlight from the backside of the apple. Grab a little bit of that green and blend back up through with the green. Need a little bit more yellow in that green. It was a little too bright. Okay. And then I'm going to use this yellow oxide color. It's a Indian yellow. Give it that green out of there. There we go. And pull down some streaks of yellow into our apple. Like I said, it's going to look worse before it looks better, so just trust the process. It's not finished yet. Let's grab some red. And we'll blend that back over while that's wet. Kind of soften up that yellow. And make it look like it's fits. Now it's kind of making a little more sense, I hope. Let's add a little white to the red. And I have all these colors still in my brush, so it's not just red and white. It's got a little bit of the yellow oxide and even tiny bit of that green. And we're going to pull from the outside in. They're going to all kind of point towards this center of the apple. So if that helps to kind of have a visual, this middle part right here is where all of these lines are going to kind of pull in front too. So point all of these curves in towards that spot. These ones are going to go straight just about. These ones on the side will curve up and over toward that spot. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's grab some bright red. We'll put some bright red. A couple spots. I don't want to cover up all of my shadow area, but I do want to kind of give it some curvature there. So I'm sort of stopping about that far away, about a brush width away from the edge, so I don't go too far into my shadow. Grab a little bit more of that yellow oxide because I kind of covered most of it up. Add a little bit of that. Add a little bit more of it up here. This apple is kind of one of the focal point fruits, really kind of the focal point, so I really spent a little bit more time on it, give a little bit more attention than the rest of the fruit. Grabbing a little bit brighter tone of red now, and I'm going to go in just slightly from the edge and curve it in, and then up and over on this side. Let's do a little highlight over here too. Okay, starting to come together. Add a little bit of quinacridone magenta to my red, just to give it another little color. This will give it kind of more of a cherry red. Doing okay, hon?
I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
I'm still awake if that's what you're asking.
Well, yeah, it's just you're getting very quiet over there. I've got burnt sienna here. A little bit, mix a little bit of that in with my reds. Get it a little bit darker right there in that center area. Maybe a little bit back and down here. Grab a little bit of that purple too. I feel like this back side of the apple could use a little bit darker shadow, so I'm going to grab the quinacridone and the purple. Maybe a little bit of cadmium red. There we go. Nice and dark right in here. Well, there we go. Okay, I'm going to grab the burnt umber and darken up that center again, just kind of tapping sort of a line right there. And then my center of my apple, my stem will come out from there, but I need to add back in some green because I kind of have covered it up. Yellow, green. There we go. Just tapping. And then I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo green to my red. And use a little bit of that down in here in my shadow area. I don't often use the complementary color in you know, my paintings, but it's actually really helpful. So like in this one I used purple, which is the opposite of yellow. In this one I'll use green, that's the opposite of the red, to do some of the shadow areas. So if you're ever kind of wondering what color to use, if you're kind of trying to come up with your own color palettes, going with the opposite color on the color wheel is often a really easy way of doing that. Grab some yellow oxide, a little bit of the unbleached titanium here. Just adding back in that. Keep losing that yellow back in here that I want. Okay, then grab some white and turn that a little bit. Mix that with a tiny bit of that red, and we'll put in our highlight of our apple right in there. Just a couple small brush strokes. I think that looks good. We'll let it dry because it usually kind of darkens and changes a little bit as it dries. So we may decide to go back in and put, because you can see how bright that was before. Now it's dark on our pear. So we're going to go back in. I'm just going to go ahead and use this color from the apple there with a little bit of red tint to it. It'll work over here, and tap in some highlights on our pear as well. That. Put a little bit right in here. Okay, I'm liking it. How are we doing on time? An hour and a half? Not too bad.
Mm-hmm. And several people say that the apple looks very real.
Good. Good.
I mean, the corn is kind of...
The corn is iffy?
Yeah. I mean,
pumpkins.
Kind of use your imagination on the corn, but the apple is spot on.
Thanks, honey. That's encouraging.
Well, you know, you got to look for the good points. Accentuate that.
Focus on the positive.
Exactly. We wanted to encourage you. Apple looks great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, grabbing the burnt umber here. I'll wet it down just a little bit so that it's easier to kind of work with. And I'm going to go ahead and sort of put in where I want my wheat stalks to be. So let's go ahead and use our chalk for that. And are you laughing at your own?
I'm laughing at myself.
Chuckling over there. Okay, so there, and then one kind of comes around like that. So I did 5. Yeah, that looks good. I think maybe I'll put this one up a little higher, like that. And then there's a leaf that kind of comes in here, out from the apple, too, like that. Okay. It'll be over the top of the stalks, but it'll be good to know where it's going to be. Okay, so I'm going to put in with this watered down burnt umber. I'm just going to kind of start the centers of our wheat stalks. Actually, I think I want these two to kind of be going in the same direction. There we go. And then I'm going to grab some bleached titanium, a little bit of yellow oxide. These are the basket colors pretty much, so sort of the same color scheme.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Oh, she scared me. That was Alexa. I have no idea what I said that made her think I was talking to her, but oh, funny. At least she didn't turn off our lights. Okay, so that was funny. All right, so I've got burnt umber kind of on one side of my brush and the lighter colors on the other, and I'm hoping that if I do this right, I can kind of get, yeah, there we go. Can get kind of both colors to come off. Lighter colors on top, darker colors on the bottom, and sort of just zigzag chevron style back and forth with these brush strokes. And every now and then some of them are pretty kind of long-ish, so you can kind of make some of them a little bit longer than others. Like that. I'm going to zoom in for this part. I think it can, what are you doing?
Well, I was trying to make sure I didn't get in your painting there as I muted the echo.
Okay.
But then you can see my arm going across the palette cam.
You're being so sneaky.
So sneaky.
Okay, just go away. It's all right. I won't say anything that triggers her again.
She's off.
Okay.
Forgot about palette cam.
Yeah. You do it so slowly too. It's even funnier. It's like
It's kind of
like
ninja
doing it
style.
slow.
Yeah.
Slow makes it quieter. Sorry, we're giggly today. Oh my gosh. That's so funny.
We'll edit that part out too.
I don't think it lets you edit more than one part out, so we've done our goof. Now we can't do any more.
Well, they're getting their money's worth today. Then.
There you go. Zoom in on this part, hon. Okay, so got dark one side, light on the other. There we go. So light one side, dark the other. And I'm kind of doing the dark side toward the bottom, light color at the top. And there we go. Kind of like we did the basket, the braid. It's almost the same kind of feeling. Like that. So, a little bit more of that light color. Unbleached titanium, yellow oxide, then turn it over, burnt umber on the other side. And then I'm going back over and kind of messing it up, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of doing, whoops, was I off?
Just the move for tips.
A little bit more of that burnt umber. It's not super dark, but you know, kind of wanted a little bit of dark in there. Get a little bit of the lighter color, and then go back over. And then this one's going to be pointing down. Kind of setting it down and kind of flicking it out. Sort of like the leaf strokes that we've done before. Okay. Then I'm going to switch to my smaller round brush and thin out my paint so that it's nice and watery, easy to flow off the brush. We'll add some long, thin lines. Grab that unbleached titanium that wasn't showing up, so need a little bit lighter. Just a few little lines in between. Let me grab a little bit of the cadmium yellow to brighten that up, make it a little bit more yellow. There we go. Grab some white. Okay. Get some yellow oxide here. And we can go back over and kind of just add a little bit of brighter highlights here and there if I need them. I like this one maybe. There we go. Add a little bit of brown to my white, the burnt umber color to the white, and maybe add a little bit of that color to the, in a few places, just to break up the sameness. I feel like this one could use a little darker in some places. Sorry, I'm whispering now. Just stop mumbling. I'm thinking. Okay, just deepening up some shadows in there. All right, I like that. I'm going to switch back to my... Will you rinse out my brushes in my water real quick for me, hon? Thank you. All right, I'm going to grab
This brush too.
number 2 flat. Yeah,
Reaching across palette cam again.
nice. We've got the cadmium red light and burnt sienna. And I'm going to use this for my leaf that's right here. And I'm just going to kind of put it in, sort of wiggling some lines, like it's sort of folded in on it over itself, and go right up to my red apple there. And this way you can also kind of clean up any boo-boos, or, you know, the edge of the wheat doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It can be. Actually, I'm going to put in a little bit more wheat right in here. Then I'm going to grab some of that yellow oxide and use a little bit of that, use a little bit of orange. Brighten that up. Grab a little bit of unbleached titanium. And sort of add some highlights. Really, that's about all it is. It's just little kind of crinkly, wiggly lines in there to sort of indicate a leaf. I'll grab some of the burnt sienna. Go back in and add a little bit of darker burnt sienna in a couple places. There we go. Thank you, hon.
You want that other one in here?
Oh, no, it's fine.
Okay.
All right, now I've got the cadmium orange. We'll work on our pumpkin. And I'm going to add highlights to the pumpkin, kind of avoiding the creases. So using that, going over, short choppy brush strokes, sort of in the direction that that pumpkin sections are growing. And you notice I'm working back to front. That's really deliberate. So that by the time I do these front pieces, all of this stuff in the back will be finished, and that way I don't have to worry about protecting my edges when I'm painting in my shadows on my apple. So by doing that, working in layers from back to front, makes it a little bit easier to get clean edges on the painting. When you're doing it like this, I probably could do the grapes right now before I even do this. But these are almost on the same level. The grapes are a little bit farther behind, but don't think it'll be an issue. Okay. Like that. Okay, I'm going to grab the cadmium red light and add a little bit of that over our shadow areas, kind of in between, and sort of down here in the center, coming out. Grabbing a little quinacridone magenta, add that to the cadmium red light, maybe even a little bit of purple. It's kind of this color that we were using on the apple. I forgot I used it on my pumpkin too. So when you're working on your apple, you can just kind of pop down here and add some of this to your pumpkin so you don't have to remix it. And add it down in here to our shadow areas of our pumpkin. And then I'm going to grab that cadmium orange. So I'll mix with what's on my brush and sort of brush back over and soften those transitions. Just tapping back over in the opposite direction. So I pulled up with the dark color, and now I'm kind of pulling back down over the top with the lighter color. That'll merge the two a little bit. There we go. Clean that brush out. Grab some of that Indian yellow. Mix that with the cadmium orange. Use that in our highlight areas. And a little bit of the cadmium yellow to that. And I'm not going right up against the edge with this. Each time I add another highlight color, I'm coming closer and closer to the center of the pumpkin section that I'm working on, so that by the time I do my highlights, they're going to be like right in the middle of each of these highest points of this sections, because you know how they kind of curve down. That way we're going to get that good rounded look to them. Cadmium orange here. These are starting to dry, so I'm going to have to be careful not to mess with it too much because I don't want it to lift off, but let's see if I can get my whiter highlights in here. I'm going to add white to my Indian yellow. There we go. Always kind of aware of pointing these brush strokes towards the center here. So as I go around, I'm kind of turning my brush so that the flat part is kind of pointing towards the center, and that way my brush strokes are going to look like I'm not going to pull my brush strokes in this direction. I'm going to pull them towards the center where they're all curving in. There we go. That bright highlight really added a lot there. Grab a little bit of the cadmium red light. A little bit of that. Let's work on the stem a little bit while this dries. Grab some burnt sienna. Add a little bit of burnt sienna. Burnt umber. nice and dark in those little crevices. Kind of make some stripes with it, and then I'm going to grab some unbleached titanium while that's wet and kind of add a little bit of highlights, just kind of use the edge of the brush to draw in. Let me bring that up a little higher. There we go. Then I'm going to use a little bit of blue, this phthalo blue, in here in my shadow area on my pumpkin. It'll contrast well with that orange color, since it's the opposite on the color wheel. Okay, clean up my brush really well, grab a little bit of white, and I've been working on this one edge of the paint puddle, and so as it starts to dry, this back end will dry, but if I kind of keep one side of it a little bit wet, I can kind of dip into it. So I'm going to kind of push up that little drying section and pull some of the clean color out of the wet part underneath. I'm going to wipe most of it off, but I'm going to have a little bit on my brush here, and I'm going to use it in my highlight area in my apple right there. Really bright on my pear right there. And then a few little places on my pumpkin. Doesn't have to be every section, but that'll really kind of make it, bring it forward. I can add a little there. Okay, I still have to put in my stem. Now that I put my leaf in, I can put my apple stem in. So I'll grab my burnt umber. I might even grab a little bit of black, just to make sure it shows up. And I'm just going to tap with this color. And create a little stem there. And my pear is going to kind of come just below the edge and curve up this way. And get a little bit of that unbleached titanium on the tip of the brush. We'll try to highlight that. There we go. Pull back through that wet paint, give it a little highlight. Okay, and then right here where it kind of connects, I'm going to just kind of tap in some little random dots so that it looks like it's not floating on there. And then I'm going to grab some yellow oxide and come up around that a little bit and tap it, blend it in slightly. There we go. I hope that they're able to see this kind of far away.
Oh yeah, it looks good.
Looks okay. You can see what I'm doing with the details.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to switch back to the number 6 bright, and I'm going to float some dark color. So I'm going to grab the burnt umber here and I'm going to just grab it on the corner of my brush with some water, and then I'm going to go along this edge here and darken up this outside edge. Trying to tap over the top of the colors there. Might even grab a little bit of the purple to make it even darker. Nice and dark down here. Probably going to need a couple of coats of this to get it as dark as I want it in this bottom corners, but then I'm going to go along these shadow areas as well. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to turn the brush over and go like this so that I've got dark color right in here. If I get too much of it, I can just kind of wipe off the edges so that it doesn't get too far in. I'm just trying to get that dark corner right along that middle line of the basket so that looks shadowed there. If you have it watery enough, you can kind of play with it while it's wet. Grab a little bit more water, a little bit more burnt umber. Go back into my pile. I'm always keeping the color on the same side so that when I go down here to my palette, I'm not getting it on both sides of my brush. And I'm going to kind of pull off some color on the one side here, and I'm going to go right up next to my braid to darken up that area. And then I'm going to darken up this where it kind of comes down into the grapes right there. And then maybe darken it up right over here a little bit too, where it kind of rolls under our basket. This far edge. There we go. Leave this top area kind of light because that's kind of facing our highlight area, right? Now we can go back through and add some brighter, crisper highlights to some. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that unbleached titanium and just pop in just a few really bright highlights in a couple places. We'll really pull those areas forward. Maybe up here on the basket. Keep them kind of in the middle, away from those middle sections. I wouldn't do too many of these, but just a few will really kind of make some of the baskets sort of pop forward a little bit. Give it a little shine. There we go. I think that's good. Maybe put a little bit up here on the tip where it's poking up right here. I don't know if I like that, but that's all right. Okay. Anytime you put a highlight in and you just want to darken it up, you can just leave it, and then you can always go back in and shadow it like I did. So if you get it too bright, or you don't like what you've done, just don't try to wipe it off. Just leave it, and you can go back in and add a little highlight or a little shadow over the top, and it'll tone it down. So I think that's looking pretty good. Yeah. Okay, let's work on our corn and our grapes. I'm going to go back to this brush here. This is my bright. And now I'm going to kind of figure out where I want my grapes to go, so I'll draw them in. So I want one right here. One is kind of back underneath it, right there. Do another one kind of setting right there, one kind of poking in right there. Here. Like that, I think. And there's one there. Another one there.
Now, are these seedless grapes?
Yes, of course. Of course. Is there any other kind to get? I don't know.
Just want to make sure
Yes,
in case I snatch one out of there.
for sure. So just kind of trying to make sense. They don't have to be all, circles next to each other. They can be overlapped a little bit. So you can kind of cut off some of them with another circle. It'll make it look a little bit more natural. And leave a little bit pockets of dark. I think, I did that too in mine. You want some really dark areas in there. That also gives it depth. So there we go. Like that. And then with the corn, I'm going to do rows. So I'm going to do stripes all the way down. Maybe start in the middle and just kind of split it right down the middle, and then do 2 lines on either side. This one kind of got off kilter there. Like that. And then it's going to have sections that cut it off in this direction too. Like that. So let's do the same thing this one. And then lots of little lines. And then our corn husks are going to kind of come and wave around like this. So I'm going to kind of do some there, some here. And then these ones are going to kind of come up. Like that. All right. And then our berries are going to come around, and if you want to, you can draw your vines. I just did kind of wiggly lines all the way around, kind of over the top of everything. You'll want to do your grapes first, but you can kind of, while you've got your chalk out, you can kind of start those lines, figure out where you want them to go. I'm going to do some that kind of come way out here, wiggle back in over the top of our pear a little bit, back over this way, like that. Okay, we're getting there, hon. Sorry. You're yawning over there.
I'm hanging in there.
Are you?
Yep.
Okay. Good. And I'll start out with my dark purple. And I'm going to kind of outline the bottom and middles of all of these. Make sure they're nice and dark in between. And this is where you can kind of shape them out too. If if your initial drawing wasn't quite right, you can or you didn't, you know, leave enough space or something around them, you can kind of fix the outlines of these now. At this point, like I want to bring this one out a little bit maybe. Make sure you get a nice dark purple down in some of these shadow areas. And these are kind of setting behind the corn, so they're tucked in, shadowed right there where it touches. Okay, I'm going to grab some burnt sienna, a little bit of white on bleached titanium, and I still have that purple on my brush. And we'll add a little bit of burnt sienna to some of these, not all of them. Grab a little quinacridone magenta, a little bit of white. Mix that with my little tiny bit of purple. Kind of soft violet color. And we'll add some of that to sort of the middle area of our grapes. Then I'm going to use the zinc white. This is where the zinc white comes in. Hopefully it's not dry. Blend that in with that pink color. And we're going to go kind of right up underneath. Actually, I think I want this one to go over the top. Right up underneath some of my grapes here. So not quite right to the edge, but pretty close. Gives it that kind of filmy look that grapes sometimes have. Like they have that kind of translucency. Maybe add a little bit at the top there too. Okay, then I'm going to grab some white. And I still have all these colors in my brush, so it's going to kind of blend. Don't want it to be pure white. I'm going to tap in some white highlights, kind of just very lightly right towards the tops of some of these now, and not all of them. Some like this one are kind of more in shadow, so just the ones that I think are kind of poking out a little bit more. And like I said before, if you get these too dark, you can always kind of go back in and tone these down. So don't worry about going nice and bright with these. Some of them I'm going to go back in and kind of really punch them up. There we go. All right, I'm going to let that set. We'll work on our green grapes and come back to this. So I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt sienna and green. Yellow green. Kind of more on the burnt sienna side. So kind of a reddish tone. And use that in our creases of our green grapes. If it's not dark enough, you can grab a little sap green to deepen it up even more. I'm going to make a yellow-green. Add some unbleached titanium. Cadmium yellow, light, medium, and tiny bit of phthalo green. And a lot of unbleached titanium. Might add a little bit more yellow, but we'll see how this looks. And then this is going to be kind of in our upper middle parts of our green grapes. Tapping that highlight in. I don't even know where that one was. Okay, there we go. I think I want to define this bottom one a little bit better. I grab a little bit of the phthalo green and mix that with this, and give this bottom one kind of a highlight along that bottom edge there. Brighten that up. I'm going to use this color to sort of define these a little bit. These green grapes have kind of more of an oblong shape. They're not as round as the red grapes are, so you can kind of do more oval shapes with them. There we go. I feel like I want one just kind of random one out here because I feel like they're all kind of mushed together. So I'm going to put one out kind of right here on its own. Use a little bit of that darker color, burnt sienna, phthalo green. Define it a little bit. Okay, let's go over the top of our green apple a little bit, or our red apple there, a little bit. There we go. This one on the bottom is kind of tucked up underneath. These ones are sort of poking out over the top. Okay. You doing okay, hon?
I'm still doing good.
You're awfully quiet.
Well, I thought I missed something there when you said the green apple, but like, okay. No, I mean, the Patreon videos are very laid back. You know, the people in chat are watching, and a couple of them have said that to make sure that I tell you that you're really appreciated in doing these videos. They really appreciate it.
I appreciate them. This makes it fun for me. These are videos that I wouldn't normally get to do because they just don't do very well on YouTube. Likes the shorter videos. They don't. These really long ones like this, they just don't do as well for some reason. So by having the folks on Patreon kind of subsidize the videos, I guess, for lack of a better word, it allows me to do these kind of fun long ones that I would normally not really do, just because they're not as popular. Well, I think they're popular, but they're not as many people. I think these are more for people who have been painting a little bit, you know, a little bit longer. All right, grabbing some white and a little bit of the cadmium yellow, making a light yellow color. I'm going to use that to kind of highlight. He's just been trying to kind of define these grapes here. Used a little bit of burnt sienna after I finished kind of shaping them all out. Here we go. That yellow brightened it up. And then we'll use a little bit of that zinc white as well. I had a little pink in there, but I actually don't mind that. I'm going to go along the top of these and kind of define them a little bit. Starting to come together. And then I'm going to grab the bright white. We'll add some little bright spots to these in a couple places. Maybe where they're going to be poking out the most, catching the light. There we go. This one down here is bugging me, but I'm brightening it up because I'm going to darken it later, so it's going to look weird at first. Okay. Okay. Now this is dry. I can kind of tell what I want to do over here. And I think I'm going to grab the quinacridone magenta with some water and add a little bit of that over the top of some of the highlighted areas.
We have a question.
Yep.
Okay, Laverne wants to know that how do you get the kind of a smoky look that the green grapes have?
Yeah, that's that zinc white. The zinc white kind of adds that sort of translucency that they have. Yeah. So I added that a couple steps before. I did it before I did the yellow. I might need to do it again over the top, and I'll probably do it again one more time on the purple grapes too. This is a little bit of burnt sienna, just adding a little bit of that back into some of these. So these purple grapes have a little bit of brownness to them in some places. Now that I've got that initial color down too, I want to wipe off my chalk lines so that I can see if I need to define these a little bit better, and I definitely do. Definitely do. Okay. That one's not too bad, but this one over here definitely needs some more outlining. So I'm going to take my small round brush, and I will use the zinc white. A little bit of purple, just to tone it down a little bit, so it's not pure white. And then I'm going to use this to sort of define these grapes a little bit better, give some of them a harder edge. I'm not completely like outlining all of them, but whenever I need a little bit more separation between two of the grapes, I'll put a little bit of this outline. Some of them don't need it at all, but some of them definitely, there's not enough kind of definition between the grapes, so I can't really tell where one starts and the other stops. This also gives it that chalky look. Outlining these. A little bit more of the zinc white there. Put this one in front. I'm liking that better now. And then we can also, if you want to get real fancy, you can take a little bit of the unbleached titanium and white and give some of these some stems. So like, you know, put some stems in sort of in between some of these areas where there is some space, if you want to. Not needed, but it kind of just adds another little layer of detail. Do a little bit on this one too. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in with the white. Clean off my brush. And add some bright dots just in a couple places on some of these grapes. Make them shiny. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to grab some purple, and I feel like I can go back in with a little bit of that purple still. And there's some areas that could be outlined a little bit. With some of that dark purple. Go back to the number 2 bright, and I'm going to add some highlights to my green grapes with yellow oxide and my phthalo green. Add a little bit of water to that. And then I'm going to wash that over the top of those highlights that I did. I don't have to go all the way to the top, but it'll kind of set those back in and make them, there we go, make them look like a little bit more part of the grape, and it also will give it a little bit more translucency look. Every time you glaze over the top of a lighter color, it adds a level of depth that you really can't get any other way. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my bright white and just using the corner.
We got a question.
Have highlight back in. Yep.
The question is, do you ever use pouncers for the grapes? Or do you consider that cheating?
No, you can use, whatever works for you, for sure. Yeah, the pouncers would give it a good, like a soft dry brush. For sure. Yeah, no, I'm all about cheating. Use whatever works for you to make it look good, It's not cheating if you get the results you want. All's fair in art. Nothing off the table. Okay, so I like that, I think. Not 100% happy with the green grapes, but I'm not sure exactly why, so I'm just going to leave them for now. Might come to me. Let's work on our corn. These are really fun. So I'm going to start with this Indian yellow. It's perfect color for Indian corn. It's got that vibrant yellow orangey color. I'm adding a little bit of the unbleached titanium. Since it's a transparent color, it's not going to show up against anything if you don't add some white to it. And I'm going to start dabbing, lots of dabbing, kind of using those guidelines as a guide. This bottom one, I just kind of did a yellow corn on the bottom here, so I didn't. So I wanted a little bit more yellow since I had so much yellow up here. I thought it'd kind of help to have another yellow, a little bit brighter yellow down in here. That was my thinking.
Could you explain a little bit more what you meant by glazing?
Yeah, glazing is just using a either a glazing medium or water to thin your paint and painting it over the top of another color that's usually lighter color. So you can do like a darker color over the top of a lighter color, or a lighter color over the top of a darker color. But yeah, it's like it's the same. I use it interchangeably with wash. So really wash is, I technically don't use the right term for wash, because wash is supposed to be for like background technique, and then glazing is for over the top of other colors. So, but I use them both. I try to catch myself.
As long as the police don't show up, I'm okay.
The art police is real. They scare me a little bit. Boy, I got lots of comments about that cat's tongue brush from Simmons cat tongue brush. I even told her. She's like, I'll send you one. She's like, the only reason, she said, like, cat tongue means Filbert in French, so I don't know why people are getting all upset about it. She's like, I just named it cat tongue because it was a little bit different from the Filbert, but it basically means the same thing. So, yeah. But the cat tongue has a little bit of a point to it. So
I mean, all these poor animals out there, deer feet and cat tongues.
I know.
So cruel.
It's a cruel industry. As we get toward the bottom here, I'm kind of just barely doing little tiny dots. And I'm trying to get as close to this other corner as I did. Again, doing the back one first, so that when I do the one on top, I can kind of cover over any mistakes I make or any overlapping that I have occurs. They don't have to line up exactly perfectly, too. If you look at corn, sometimes they're not quite exactly lined up, and they're not always like right side by side either. Sometimes they're a little bit offset, so don't get too caught up on that. Just have fun with it. And I'm going to use a little bit of this color up in here on this one. I'm just going to do some random every now and then. Yellow. Just kind of using my guidelines more as a rough placement than anything. I'm going to add some cadmium yellow to this color. Oh, a little bit brighter yellow. These should be dry enough to kind of do another coat on them. I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium yellow to some of them. And I'm curving the top edges a little bit, rounding them off a little bit so that they look like rounded, and the same thing on the bottom. So they're kind of little oval shapes. They're not like squares. I'm using a square brush, but really they're more like ovals. So I'm kind of curving down, and then I'm curving up as well. Up. So that I'm making more kind of oval shapes. There we go. I feel like this could be a little bit wider up here, so I'm just going to put another row that's sort of peeking behind that. Right there and there. Okay. A little bit of the bright yellow corn. Whoops. Oh, that was messy. Let's grab some purple. We'll add a little bit of the unbleached titanium just to soften that up. And I had that yellow on my brush, so it's going to kind of change the color a little bit. Grab some phthalo blue here. I didn't use the ultramarine blue at all. I think I had it out. I don't know why I put it on there. I just forgot to take it off my list. I couldn't remember where I used it, and I'm pretty sure I didn't use it at all.
Oh, you're going to use it now?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm not going to use it.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to come over there and use it if I have to.
I'm making blue with the purple. This is actually pretty close to ultramarine blue. And adding a little bit of white. We'll put a few like pretty blue corn. will kind of tie in our background color too. And if you want to, you can add a little bit of this color, kind of wipe it off my brush here, and maybe add a little bit of it in some of my shadow areas on my gourd here. A little bit of that blue, purple tint. Kind of unify the painting a little bit.
So what corn brush are you using?
This is the number 2 bright. This is pretty much, probably 75% of the painting is done with this brush. It's just the right size for it. It does really good dry brushing. I want to do a little bit more, grab the orange, a little bit of yellow. Do a little bit more right here, noticing just a little bit brighter. Cadmium yellow, orange, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange. Here, just giving our pumpkin a little bit brighter yellow. Right there. Beautiful. I like it when it gets to this stage where it's starting to make sense. The corn still looks like a hot mess, but we'll get it there. Let's do some quinacridone magenta and cadmium red light. Maybe a little bit of burnt sienna, tone it down slightly. That orangey red. There we go. I forgot I went through and I outlined these with purple before I did. I forgot to do that part. On this one, I went through and I put purple. I can still do it, so really quick. Grab some purple. And I just went through and kind of darkened up these areas between the sections so that it had a little bit more shadow. Our yellow is dry, so I'll go ahead and use this purple that I got on my brush to shadow. Shadow the bottom of it. I'm kind of shadowing the bottom side of these because maybe the light's hitting the top, but then this bottom side is getting a little bit of shadow. And I'm heavily shadowing this side since this other one is leaning up against it. Just doing that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Just putting a little shadow in there. Grab a little bit of burnt umber. Add some water. Wipe off the extra. We'll use a little bit of that as well. Really darken it up. There we go. Grab a little bit of the unbleached titanium. Add a little bit of dotting right here at the tip where the end of the corn kind of has that sort of rough texture at the very tip. And then we'll use what's left there. Kind of start putting in our corn husk. I'll add other colors, but I'm going to start. The less you worry about each individual line with this, the better. It's kind of does really well if you just kind of do some flowy lines, let them overlap a little bit. It's really fun. Okay, that right up against that end of the corn there. And then we'll grab some burnt umber and go right up there over the top and kind of shadow that where it's touching the end of the corn. My back paint is getting dry. Maybe time to put out fresh paint. It's hard when you get to the end here. You've been working on painting for a couple hours. So we've been almost 2 hours. That's not too bad, actually.
It's 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Is it? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay.
We didn't have a time change there or anything.
No,
during the
okay.
show, no.
Well, all right. I thought I did really good.
And I think you got plenty of blue out. You can use that.
Well, no wonder it's starting to dry. 2 hours and 45 minutes. I was hoping for about 2.5 hours. I couldn't remember how long it took me. I was working on this late last night, so I wasn't really paying attention to the time. Nothing like waiting till the last minute. All right, grab a little white. Add some white streaks into our corn husk there. Grab some of that brown. Grab some yellow oxide too. Add some yellow oxide in here. Just kind of alternating, trying to kind of pick out some areas now that I've got some light and dark going on. Pick out some areas that I want to be brought forward with a little bit brighter highlights. Okay. I want some really dark in here. There's no contrast. There we go. Better. Let's put a little bit of that darker color on the top of our corn cobs. I kind of figured this would be a long one, but I didn't think it would be this long. This may break the record for the longest one we've done. All right, so back in with the white now. Okay, there we go. Let's keep on going with our corn cob. Need a few more colors here. Grab some orange and cad red. A little bit of the burnt sienna. If you have like a color like red oxide, red iron oxide or something like that, would probably be a good color for this corn too. Kind of fill in most of these with this orange color, and then I'll put other colors in there with it. Get some burnt umber. Mix that with some yellow oxide. It's got green in here too. A little bit of white to make it pop off the canvas. There we go. I'm using this to kind of highlight a few of these. I'm wanting to go over the top of my lines that I did so that they don't look like stripes in my corn here, so I'm just kind of targeting those areas in between where I have that purple line going down. Starting to look like corn. Let's see, let's do a little bit of red. Really, they're not that bright red. Add a little bit of burnt umber to kind of tone it down. Do a little bit of quinacridone magenta and purple. This is a perfect way to kind of unify the painting too. Kind of take all the colors we've used and just pop them into this corn here. Fortunately, they have all these wild colors in there. It's really fun. Really fun. Oh yeah, that's a good color. Use it kind of sparingly. I don't want to overwhelm it with this color, but a little bit of that helps. Let's get a little bit of that purple again. Put in some of that dark purple in a couple places again. I'm going to let that set and dry, and then I'm going to come back to it. But I want to put in our vine, so let's grab some black, add some water, and I'm going to get my liner brush out, make it a little bit easier. This is the 10-aught Simmons liner, Robert Simmons Sapphire. And I'm going to use the outline that I did before just kind of as a rough guide, but I'm not going to try to trace. I never want to try to trace over anything when I'm lining because it just makes it too difficult to get a good flow. You just kind of want to hold it real close up, make sure that you have enough water in your brush, Make sure you have it loaded to a fine point. And then I just kind of lead it and wiggle. I find that it helps to have the canvas tilted in the direction I want to go. So as I do these ones over here, I might turn the canvas a little bit.
Slide the canvas.
Okay. This is a way also to kind of add some movement, sort of fill in some areas that might, you know, need a little bit more attention. I'm gonna turn it around to do this section. Let's see. And anywhere you kind of make a boo-boo or you just don't really like how the line turned out, we'll just throw some berries over to the top of it. So don't sweat it.
Put a berry on it?
Yep, put a berry on it. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's pretty good. I don't like how those touch. Okay, there we go. Alright, once you get all the little curly cues in, then we can go back to our little round brush here. I'm going to put in berries with the red and use a little bit of purple to darken it up. Actually might add some phthalo blue, see what that does. Pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to really load it on fairly thick with these berries and maybe load 2 colors on the brush to get that darker color and then kind of pull it through the lighter color so I have both colors working on my brush so I can just kind of plop down and get some dual color action.
I think the corn looks a little bit better now.
Does it? Well,
Yep. Better than it did about an hour ago.
yeah, I agree. Adding our little berries here along our vine. I'm kind of doing them in sort of small clusters too. That's kind of how they grow. Leave a little space between. So I'm going to kind of fix this junction area because I don't really like what it's doing there. So. Kind of look at the flow too. I don't want to repeat too much, but like if I want to pull some color out, I might put a little bit more, out of way. I'm not kind of overlapping the apple too much because I don't want to compete with the red in the apple. So I'm doing berries around it, but not on it. That makes sense. And I'm doing some lighter, bigger, and smaller, some smaller, so. Sometimes I go over the line, sometimes I go kind of right next to it. I'm trying to sort of, if I have a berry that's sort of out on its own, I'm trying to at least get it close to another one so that it looks like maybe it's attached to something. You can always go back in and add a vine kind of going out to it if you want to. I think it's too terribly important.
So are these any specific berries or just make-believe?
I don't know what they look like. They look like those berries that you used to get for me when we did those wreaths. Remember? You used to get those, pull them out of the tree on the vine.
Oh, yeah.
And make the wreaths.
Yeah, I don't know what that is called.
I don't either. That's what they remind me of, though.
I'm going to call them Fred's berries.
Fred's berries?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what they are.
Is that what you looked it up?
No.
Oh.
I mean, names have to start somewhere.
God.
Right?
Well, why not Mark's berries then?
Well, I don't want to be too pretentious. Stick berries.
When you're... yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, we got Stick Woman today, too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm almost there.
You got to do a full cornucopia on Stick Woman, okay?
Okay, I don't know about that.
That reminds me of that Amazon Echo Silver.
What about it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that. Nobody has a clue what we're talking about. It's okay.
I did show that to my parents when I was up there.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Burnt sienna purple here. I'm going to shadow our corn here, and then I'll probably add some highlights to it as well. And do nice dark along this bottom edge here. And then kind of shadow in between in the rows. Put a little shadow on this corn husk. All right. And this is where I kind of stop and look at it and go, okay, I think that this pumpkin needs a little bit darker shadow under here. So I'm going to add a little bit of this watered down burnt sienna and purple down here. My paint is getting so dry it's not wanting to go on smoothly. Maybe add a little bit of it in on my grapes, my green grapes over here. Go back in with my yellow and white and create kind of a soft, bright white yellow color. Use that to highlight some of these corn. So I'll kind of go right in the middle here, just brighten up those. Let's do a little bit of this on some of these. Grab some of that white and put a really bright highlights on a few of these. Woo, that's too big. Too big. Just tap that off. Take most of that color off. Let's try that again. Not too much paint. I had too much paint on there. There we go. Little bitty white highlights. Kind of like we did on the grapes. You don't have to do all of them. It will help kind of bring it forward. Especially if you kind of use it to kind of curve around these edges and round out some of these shapes in the corn. You could even use your zinc white. Just make sure you're not covering up all your dark shadows in between these. That would be the tendency. Put a little bit of this color down in here too.
I like the whisper too.
Okay, sorry. That's dry enough, we can use a little bit of this cadmium red medium and wash over the top some of those light colors that we just put in. Grab a little bit of that purple, mix it with a little bit of this red that's over here. Use it to give this area a good little shadow again. A little bit of white mixed with the... Really depends on how, what colors you used. I'm just seeing that I need a little bit of brighter color down in here so I can see the difference between... There we go. Let's put a little bit of yellow. Yellow oxide, cadmium yellow medium. Put some yellow back in. There we go. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Scooter's like done. Like, are we done yet? He's over there yawning,
he's like,
snorting,
enough's enough.
making all kinds of noises. Okay, go ahead and zoom out. Let me look at that. See what I think. Oh yeah, our berries need highlights. Let's not forget them. A little bit of white. The red. We're going to highlight each one of these. Kind of sort of outlining it, not really, but sort of. Especially if it's in an area where it needs to kind of have a little contrast. I'll do sort of like what I did with the grapes and define it with this highlight color a little bit. Just do a soft outline. Almost done. A lot of little details, but it's really worth it. You don't want to skimp on any of this because it makes a big difference. And you've put so much work into all the other details, you don't want to have your berries kind of just dots of red.
And you're using the same zinc white on these also?
This is the white and red, just regular titanium white, but you could use, probably zinc white would be good use. Actually, I just forgot I had it out. And I'm not completely outlining them on. I'm not putting the same highlight in all of them. So I'm kind of trying to keep them a little bit random. That just helps with the overall look. Some of them will be maybe turned away a little bit or turned on their side, or, they won't all be exactly the same. And then I'm going to go back in with the bright red, just the bright red. Kind of add a little bit of that too to a few of them. If it needs it, it might not. Especially if you're using a lower quality paint or you're going over a really dark area, you might need 2 coats on your red. So this is just to make sure they're nice and bright. And then let's add bright white. I'm just going to make sure that my grapes have good bright highlights on here. There we go. Might redo a few on here if I need to. This is where I kind of going to look and see, make sure that everything has depth. You don't want anything that not to have some sort of depth. Okay, looks good. I kind of feel like this corn could look a little more rounded, but I'm not going to mess with it anymore. I might add a few little dots of that white to the berries, just a few of them. Alrighty, I'm good. Let's sign this puppy. Do you see anything that I left out? Seems like every time I do one of these, I forget something important. Notice like the second you turn off the camera.
I'm not seeing anything, but I may not be the best person to ask. So.
Okay. Well,
other than Stick Woman.
Okay.
I'll look at it a little bit longer.
I'll look at it while I'm doing Stick Woman.
Okay.
So.
Voila.
What is she? She's getting an apple, I guess. Because I'm
Sounds
not going
good.
to do a whole cornucopia.
No, I don't blame you.
Boom. Apple.
Good for me. Done.
We'll give her the highlight. There we go.
No, that's great.
Okay. Let me bring this back over. I'm going to very carefully just kind of tap off the vine. Make sure I don't wipe off my berries if they're wet. So you can get a finished look at it without the chalk. I'll be posting the traceable later on today, probably, and then we'll have some dinner first, so it might be later on tonight. But then we're gonna I'll post the picture of the finished one too, so you can kind of see it and you can kind of compare the difference between that one and this version, so you can kind of see side by side how the tilted apple kind of helped the composition, and pulling that in that way maybe too, hopefully. So anyhow, all right. Oh, that was a long one, but that was fun. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it too.
Yeah, they did. They said they really appreciate you taking the time and going through each detail to that level. So
good. All right. Well, we will see you next time, guys. And if you are new to my channel, I don't know if I'm going to be posting this later, but if I did and you're seeing it for the first time and you're new to my channel, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.